This is a video on how to make healthy Christmas starters. Tomato soup, mushroom soup, a salad and a garlic flatbread. Here's how to make a Christmassy mushroom soup from scratch. First, you need to make the vegetable broth. So for that you need half a carrot, a fourth of a small onion, but I've done a bit more, 1/2 of a celery stalk, 1 garlic clove and a bay leaf if you've got one, that's just optional. You can have a handful of fresh herbs, so just parsley or thyme if desired, but I haven't got them. And lastly, a cup of water. So personally, I'm going to make my own vegetable broth because the normal vegetable broths you get like in a packet have usually got many additives and I only eat like from raw. So you can follow this if you want. If you don't, then just get your own vegetable broth and put it in 1/2 cup of water. I'm going to be putting the recipe on the screen. So you need to have all of this chopped up. So that's what I am now going to do. Now that's all chopped up, and for the garlic as it's smashed, I just crushed it on the back of a spoon. You then just put all of this into the pan. Bring to boil over a medium heat, then reduce to a simmer. Then let it simmer for 15 to 20 minutes. While the vegetable broth is simmering for the 10 to 15 minutes, I cut up the cup of mushrooms just into slices, and then I chopped up the 1/4 of an onion and also finally minced the garlic clove. And a pro tip, if you put a wet paper towel when you're cutting your onions, it stops you from getting runny eyes, but it doesn't always work. So for the next part, you need some coconut oil. I personally use coconut oil because it's a good oil, the rest are not so great for you. And then also 1/2 cup of coconut milk. Again, because it's all vegan, I'm not using actual milk. And coconut milk's one of the 3 milks that are pretty good for you. And then as I said earlier, the mushrooms, the garlic and the onion. And then you're going to need 1/4 teaspoon of rosemary, 1/4 teaspoon of thyme, and 1/4 teaspoon of Himalayan pink salt. So I use that instead of just normal table salt because this has a load of minerals in it, whereas normal table salt is just sodium chloride, not all the other 72 minerals. And the last ingredient will be the 1/2 cup of vegetable broth once that is done. Very quick and easy recipe. Once the vegetable broth has simmered for 15 minutes, you then turn the heat off and then strain it through a fine mesh strainer into some sort of jug. Now that you've got the vegetable broth ready, you can move on to the actual soup recipe. So put some coconut oil in a pan, about a teaspoon, and then add the onion and garlic until it's softened and fragrant. And then once that's had 2 to 3 minutes, you need to add the mushrooms and cook them for 5 to 6 minutes, stirring occasionally until they release their moisture and start to brown. Once the mushrooms have had 5 to 6 minutes, you need to stir in the 1/4 teaspoon of rosemary, salt and thyme and cook for an additional 1 to 2 minutes to release the aroma of the herbs. Make sure you stir this often, otherwise it'll stick to the bottom and burn very quickly. Once the herbs have released their aroma, you need to pour in 1/2 the cup of coconut milk and 1/2 the cup of vegetable broth, or just water if that's what you used. You now need to let it simmer for 5 to 7 minutes until the mushrooms are tender and flavours meld. Once you've let it simmer for 5 to 7 minutes and the mushrooms are tender, you need to use an immersion blender directly in the pot for a smooth soup, or transfer to a regular blender after cooling slightly. Blend until smooth. Because I don't have a handheld immersion blender, I've let mine cool and now I'm going to put it into just a normal blender until it's smooth. If you used a blender like I did, you might need to add a bit of water to make it a bit less thick, and then put it back in the pan and heat it up a bit if you want it a bit warmer. Taste and adjust seasoning if needed. Serve hot, garnish with extra thyme leaves or a drizzle of olive oil. And you could make your own garlic pita bread as well, that I will show you how to make. Now enjoy your soup. This is now how to make the healthy tomato and basil soup. So again, I make my own vegetable broths because I don't like the vegetable cube broth things that are usually toxic with added ingredients. So for this you need half a carrot, 1/4 of an onion, but I guess I'll just use a small onion, very small onion, half a celery stick, 1 garlic clove, a bay leaf, it's optional, and a cup of water. Now it's easy, all you got to do is chop up the carrot, chop up the onion, chop up the celery, smash the garlic clove, so just do it with the back of a spoon, and then just put the bay leaf in a pan, and then you have to bring that to boil and then reduce and simmer for 15 to 20 minutes. So it should be looking like this, and then you need to bring it to a boil, like I said, over a medium to high heat. And once it starts boiling, you will reduce it to a low heat and simmer for 15 to 20 minutes. Whilst the vegetable broth is simmering for that 15 to 20 minutes, you might as well get your other things ready for the actual soup. So you're going to be needing half a cup of basil leaves. You're going to be needing 1 cup, once I've done it, of chopped, halved cherry tomatoes, or just 2 large tomatoes, a 1/4 of an onion again, but I'm just going to use a small one, some more for garnish, a bit more basil, and a garlic clove, plus some extra things like the sea salt and some, I've got dried thyme, which is optional. I'm going to use a 1/4 of a teaspoon of that, half a cup of coconut milk, what I'll get to, and then the half the cup of the homemade vegetable broth when it's done. So you're now going to want to mince up the garlic, as you can see I've done. Just chop up the onions finely, and half the tomatoes. After the 15 to 20 minutes up, you need to strain it in a fine mesh strainer and dispose of the vegetables and keep the vegetable broth left in some sort of jug. Now you're going to move on to the actual soup recipe. You're going to put about a teaspoon of coconut oil in the pan. I personally use coconut oil just because I know that's the healthiest for me. You're going to heat that up till it's melted, and then you're going to add the onion and the garlic until that is starting to brown, so for 2 to 3 minutes. You want to be very careful to make sure this doesn't stick to the pan and burn, because it happens very easily. Once the 2 to 3 minutes are up, it's time to add the chopped tomatoes and some salt. You need to now cook these for 5 to 7 minutes, stirring occasionally until the tomatoes start to break down and release their juices. This is how the tomato should start to be looking after the 5 to 7 minutes is up. Now it's time to add in the half a cup of basil and the bit of thyme I'm going to use, because I'm going to use dried, but you can use fresh if you want. And you now need to cook these for an extra 1 to 2 minutes until the basil starts to wilt. After the 1 to 2 minutes is up, it's time to add the half a cup of vegetable broth and half a cup of coconut milk. Now leave this to simmer for about 5 to 7 minutes until the tomatoes soften and all the flavours meld together. After the 5 to 7 minutes is up, if you have a hand blender that's best, blend the soup directly in the pan until smooth, or leave it a little chunky if you prefer. However, if you don't, which I don't have a hand blender, then use a regular blender, but let the soup cool slightly for about 5 to 10 minutes after simmering to avoid steam build up, because it can pop off the lid and then you'll have soup everywhere, so that wouldn't be good. And then transfer the soup carefully into the blender, leaving the lid, don't leave it slightly open if it's cooled, and probably keep hold of it, and it says you can even cover it with a kitchen towel to release the steam. Blend until smooth, then return the soup to the pot and reheat gently if needed. After you've let it cool for about 5, 10, 15 minutes, just until it's not boiling or really steamy, you then transfer it into your blender. Once it's your desired consistency, this is kind of what I'm going for. Because I let mine cool, I'm now going to reheat it in a pan. So I'm now just going to bring that to a boil till it starts bubbling, and then that is the right temperature that I want it for to eat it. So I've got mine warm enough, I'm now going to transfer it to a bowl. And that's the soup done. Now you can enjoy it knowing you've made a healthy soup that's good for you. Here's how to make a healthy alkaline salad. So you're going to need some lettuce leaves, not iceberg lettuce because that is GMO. So I usually use some sort of other alternative, and then you just need enough to cover your plate really. So 6 medium sized, whereas I had a few small ones, so I got about 8 leaves. And then you're going to need 1/4 of a cucumber just to then cut into cubes, 6 cherry tomatoes, or use plum, but obviously not then 6 because they're the 2 good tomatoes. I got 5 tomatoes because that's what I had left. A handful of kale, but really just enough to then cover your lettuce, so then you have like layers. Fresh dill for garnish is then optional if you want to. 1/2 an avocado, but I usually use a full one because they go off very quick after you cut them open. And then just herbs of your choice, for example sage, basil, parsley, to just sprinkle on top. I use about a teaspoon of like many herbs that I'll show you. And then you're going to need some other ingredients for the lemon tahini that I'll get onto when I do. So now I'm going to show you how I prepare it. So that should be how the actual salad base is looking. Now it's time for the herbs and then the dressing. So these are all the herbs I'm going to put on, about a teaspoon of every single one. So sage, tarragon, basil, parsley, oregano, thyme, and just a mixed herbs, and a pink Himalayan salt. I just sprinkle many herbs to cover the salad. So that's now the herbs done, and now lastly it's time for the lemon tahini dressing. So for this you're going to need about 1/4 of a lemon, 1/4, a tablespoon of tahini, a tablespoon of olive oil, a tablespoon of water, and some salt again, and then some honey. Just 1/2 teaspoon of honey. So all you've got to do is add all of them into a bowl and then whisk together. And then just get a spoon and cover your salad with your dressing. Now scran and enjoy. This is now how to make the healthy garlic flatbread. So the reason it's healthy is because it's got spelt flour instead of white flour, and it's got no yeast in it, and it's alkaline. So you're going to be needing some coconut oil. This is what I use, 100% organic virgin coconut oil. A bit of sea salt, don't really need to show you that. A cup of flour, again I'm using spelt flour. Some warm water, which is here. 1/3 of a cup of warm water. And that is what we're going to start with to make the actual dough. And then for the topping, you'll need some olive oil, a garlic clove, and some fresh basil, finely chopped. So I'm going to get on with the first thing. Mix the dry ingredients in the bowl. So in a medium bowl, combine the spelt flour and the sea salt. A fourth teaspoon of sea salt, but I just put like a few twists in. Next, you need to add the wet ingredients, so gradually add warm water and coconut oil to the flour mixture. Start mixing with a spoon, then use your hands to form a soft dough. If it feels too dry, add a bit more water, a teaspoon at a time. Now a tablespoon of coconut oil. Now this is what it's looking like, and then now you need to transfer the dough onto a lightly floured surface and knead for about 5 minutes until it's smooth and elastic. Now you need to rest the dough. Cover the dough with a clean cloth and let it rest for 10 to 15 minutes. While you're letting the dough sit for about 10 to 15 minutes, you might as well get going with preparing the garlic basil topping. So just mince up a garlic clove and chop up very finely a tablespoon of basil. And then in a small bowl, mix a tablespoon of olive oil, the minced garlic, the chopped basil, and a pinch of sea salt, and let sit for 5 to 10 minutes. Now let that sit for 5 to 10 minutes. After you've let the dough sit for about 10 to 15 minutes, you need to now divide the dough into 2 equal portions, roll each into a ball, then flatten them into circles about 1/4 of an inch thick. Now heat a pan over medium heat and cook each flatbread for about 1 to 2 minutes on each side until lightly browned and slightly puffed up. Now I'm just going to put mine on a low at the start because it's a cast iron, and then I might heat it up a bit more to about a medium after a short while. I've now increased the heat after about 40 seconds, and I'm now going to make sure it doesn't stick. I'm just going to keep moving them a bit and do them for about 2 minutes on each side. I've done mine for a bit longer because I like mine quite well done. I could have done them probably a bit thinner so that they cooked a bit better, but that's fine. Once that they have puffed up a bit and are lightly browned, move them onto something to then put the garlic topping on. So once the flatbreads are cooked, brush each with the garlic basil olive oil mixture. If you don't have an actual little brush, then just use a fork or a spoon. Now enjoy your healthy garlic flatbread. If you want to know how to make healthy Christmas mains, then click this video on screen now or browse this playlist to see what you like.